The cerulean brass of Proxima crunched under Aria Novak's boots as she stepped out of the landing pod. The twin suns hanging low on the horizon bathed the alien landscape in an eerie purple glow. Aria's heart raced, a mix of excitement and trepidation coursing through her veins. After years of searching, humanity had finally made contact with an intelligent alien species. "Control, this is Explorer Novak. I've made landfall," Aria reported into her comm unit. "No sign of the aliens yet, but their biosignatures are strong." Proceeding to the designated meeting point. As Aria trekked across the otherworldly terrain, her mind wandered to the events that led to this moment. The discovery of that Silas transmission, the frantic preparations, the heated debates about first contact protocols. Now, it all came down to her, a lone human venturing into the unknown. The sound of rustling vegetation snapped Aria back to attention. She froze, her hand instinctively moving to the non-lethal stunner at her hip. A figure emerged from the dense foliage ahead, and Aria's breath caught in her throat. The alien stood nearly 7 feet tall, its body a shimmering tapestry of iridescent scales. 4 arms extended from its torso, each ending in delicate, multi-jointed fingers. But it was the being's face that captivated Aria, a mesmerizing blend of insectoid and reptilian features, with large, compound eyes that seemed to shimmer with intelligence. "Greetings, human," the alien spoke, its voice a melodic trill that Aria's universal translator struggled to keep up with. "I am Zorn, lead xenobiologist of the Tyleth Collective. We welcome you to our world." Aria swallowed hard, forcing herself to remember her training. "Hello, Zorn. I'm Aria Novak, representing the United Earth Alliance. We're honored by your invitation and eager to learn about your people." Zorn's head tilted slightly, a gesture Aria couldn't quite interpret. "The feeling is mutual, Aria Novak. Your species has long been a subject of fascination for us. Please, follow me to our research facility. There is much to discuss." As they walked, Zorn peppered Aria with questions about Earth, human society, and biology. Aria answered as best she could, all while marveling at the alien's insatiable curiosity. It wasn't until they reached the sleek, organic-looking structure of that Silith facility that Zorn's inquiries took an unexpected turn. "Aria Novak, our scans indicate a significant biological difference between us," Zorn said, compound eyes fixed intently on her. "Your species possesses distinct sexual dimorphism, correct? With external reproductive organs." Aria felt heat rise to her cheeks, caught off guard by the directness of the question. Yes, that's correct. Humans have 2 primary sexes, male and female, with different reproductive systems." Zorn's scales rippled with what Aria assumed was excitement. "Fascinating. Our species reproduces through spore release and genetic recombination. The concept of internal fertilization is quite alien to us. Would you be willing to participate in a detailed anatomical study?" Aria's mind raced. This wasn't exactly how she'd imagined first contact going, but she reminded herself of the mission's importance. Scientific exchange was a crucial step toward building trust between their species. "I'd be happy to answer questions and provide non-invasive scans," Aria replied carefully. "But I think we should establish some boundaries and protocols first." Zorn's head bobbed in what Aria hoped was agreement. Of course. My enthusiasm sometimes outpaces my manners. Please, let us continue our discussion inside. There is much to learn about each other, and we have only just begun to scratch the surface." As they entered the facility, Aria couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the first of many surprises awaiting her on this alien world. The future of human-Silith relations hung in the balance, and she was determined to navigate these uncharted waters with wisdom and diplomacy. Little did Aria know, her journey was about to take an unexpected turn, one that would challenge everything she thought she knew about alien life and push the boundaries of interspecies understanding to their limits. As Aria followed Zorn into that Silith research facility, she marveled at the organic architecture surrounding her. The walls seemed to pulse with a faint bioluminescence, and corridors branched off like veins in a living organism. "Our structures are grown, not built," Zorn explained, noticing Aria's wonder. "They respond to our needs and adapt over time." Aria nodded, mentally cataloging the information for her report. "It's incredible. On Earth, we're only beginning to experiment with bioengineering on this scale." They entered a large chamber filled with holographic displays and strange, pulsating equipment. Several other Asyliths worked at various stations, their scales shimmering as they moved. All activity ceased as Aria entered, compound eyes swiveling to focus on her. "Colleagues," Zorn announced, "I present Aria Novak of Earth. She has agreed to assist in our xenobiology studies." A ripple of excitement passed through the room. One Thylith, smaller than the others with vibrant blue-green scales, approached. "Welcome, Aria Novak. I am Vex, assistant to Zorn. Your presence here is most enlightening." Aria smiled, trying to project confidence despite her nervousness. "I'm happy to help. I hope we can learn much from each other." Over the next few hours, Aria found herself at the center of an intense but fascinating cultural exchange. The Thyliths were eager to learn about every aspect of human life, from biology and technology to art and philosophy. In turn, Aria absorbed as much as she could about Xylith society. She learned their collective decision-making process, their symbiotic relationship with their planet's ecosystem, and their deep reverence for knowledge. The Xyliths had no concept of war or violent conflict, a fact that both impressed and concerned Aria. How would they react if they knew humanity's troubled history? As promised, Aria agreed to non-invasive scans, watching in amazement as holographic representations of her internal organs hovered in the air. The Xyliths were particularly intrigued by the human reproductive system. "Remarkable," Vex commented, studying the holographic uterus. "Your species carries its offspring internally for an extended period. Does this not put a great strain on the body?" Aria chuckled. "It can, yes, but many humans find the process deeply rewarding." Zorn, who had been quiet for some time, suddenly spoke up. "Aria Novak, we have a request. Our preliminary scans show fascinating differences between human male and female physiology. Would it be possible to bring a male representative here for comparative study?" Aria hesitated. While she understood the scientific value, she worried about potential complications. "I need to consult with my superiors first. We want to ensure all parties are comfortable with the arrangement." Vex's scales rippled in what Aria had come to recognize as disappointment. "Of course, we do not wish to cause discomfort. Perhaps we could discuss theoretical aspects for now." As they delved into a discussion of human genetics and sexual dimorphism, Aria couldn't shake a growing sense of unease. The Xylith's curiosity seemed genuine, but there was an intensity to their inquiries that made her wonder if they had ulterior motives. Her concerns were momentarily forgotten when Zorn invited her to observe a Xylith spore release ceremony. In a garden-like chamber, Aria watched in awe as a group of Xyliths began to glow, their scales vibrating as they released clouds of luminescent spores into the air. "The spores will mix and recombine," Zorn explained softly. "In time, new Xyliths will emerge, carrying the genetic legacy of many contributors." The beauty and alienness of the process left Aria speechless. It was a powerful reminder of how different their species were, yet how they could still find common ground in the miracle of life. As the ceremony concluded, Vex approached Aria with an excited gleam in her compound eyes. "We have prepared quarters for you, Aria Novak. Tomorrow, we hoped you might accompany us on an expedition to study some of our world's indigenous fauna." Aria nodded, her scientific curiosity piqued despite her lingering concerns. "I'd be honored. Thank you for sharing so much with me today." That night, as Aria lay in her bioorganic pod, her mind raced with all she had learned. The Xyliths were fascinating, their society in many ways more advanced than humanity's. Yet she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more going on beneath the surface. As she drifted off to sleep, Arya resolved to remain vigilant. Tomorrow's expedition would be another opportunity to build trust between their species, but also a chance to probe deeper into the mysteries of Sylith culture and their true intentions toward humanity. Little did she know, the upcoming expedition would lead to a discovery that would shake the foundations of both human and Sylith understanding of the universe. The alien suns had barely crested the horizon when Arya found herself boarding a Sylith biovessel for the promised expedition. The craft pulsed and hummed beneath her feet, its organic technology still a marvel to her human senses. "We've headed to the Crimson Valleys," Zorn explained as they lifted off. "It's a region rich in biodiversity, home to some of our world's most fascinating creatures." Vex, seated nearby, added, "We're particularly interested in your perspective on our wildlife, Arya Novak. The way different species perceive and categorize life forms can be quite illuminating." As they soared over the landscape, Arya marveled at the ever-changing terrain below. Forests of crystalline trees gave way to undulating plains of what looked like living mercury. The Crimson Valleys, when they came into view, lived up to their name, deep gashes in the planet's surface, their walls streaked with vibrant red mineral deposits. The biovessel touched down on a plateau overlooking one of the valleys. As they disembarked, Arya noticed a shift in the Sylith's behavior. Their movements seemed more urgent, their communication more clipped. "Is everything all right?" she asked Zorn. The lead xenobiologist's scales rippled in what Arya had come to recognize as agitation. "There have been disturbances in this region recently. Nothing to be concerned about, I assure you." Arya's instincts, honed by years of exploration, told her otherwise. She kept her guard up as they began their survey of the local flora and fauna. The expedition started peacefully enough. Arya was fascinated by the symbiotic relationships between the valley's plants and animals, so different from Earth's ecosystems. She was in the middle of examining a flower-like organism that seemed to communicate through bioluminescent pulses when a piercing shriek split the air. "Ventar!" Vex cried out, their usual composure shattered. "We must seek shelter immediately." Before Arya could ask what a Ventar was, she saw it. A massive, serpentine creature erupted from the valley floor, its body covered in razor-sharp scales. Multiple heads, each equipped with rows of gleaming teeth, snapped at the air as it rose. "Run!" Zorn shouted, already sprinting towards a cave entrance in the valley wall. Arya didn't need to be told twice. She ran, heart pounding, the sound of the Ventar's multiple heads snapping at her heels spurring her on. She dove into the cave just as one of the creature's heads lunged, its teeth grazing her suit. Safe for the moment, Arya turned to the Sylith, her breath coming in ragged gasps. What was that thing?" Zorn's compound eyes seemed to dim. "The Ventar is an apex predator of our world. Highly intelligent, incredibly dangerous. We had thought they were extinct in this region." "Extinct?" Arya's eyes narrowed. "You brought me out here knowing there was a chance we'd encounter something like that." Vex stepped forward, their scales shifting in patterns Arya couldn't interpret. "We calculated the risk to be minimal. The potential scientific value of observing your reactions to our wildlife outweighed my safety." Arya cut in, anger rising. "Did you even consider how my death or injury could impact relations between our species?" The cave fell silent, the only sound the distant roars of the Ventar as it searched for them. Arya's mind raced, reassessing everything she thought she knew about the Syliths. Had their friendly demeanor and scientific curiosity all been a front? Zorn finally broke the silence. "Arya Novak, we have not been entirely forthcoming with you." Arya's hand instinctively moved to her communicator. "What do you mean?" "Your arrival on our world was not just a matter of scientific interest," Zorn continued, their voice low. "Our society is facing a crisis, a genetic degradation that threatens our very existence. We had hoped that studying human biology might provide a solution." The revelation hit Arya like a physical blow. So all of this, the cultural exchange, the questions about human reproduction, it was all just to find a way to save ourselves. Vex's scales darkened. Not entirely. Our curiosity and desire for peaceful contact were genuine. But yes, we had hoped. We had hoped human genetic diversity might hold the key to our salvation. Aria's anger warred with her empathy. She understood that Silas' desperation, but their deception stung. Why didn't you just ask for help? Humans have faced our own genetic challenges. We might have been willing to assist if you'd been honest. Before any of the Asilis could respond, the cave trembled. The Venta, it seemed, had not given up its hunt. We need to find a way out of here, Aria said, pushing aside her feelings for the moment. Once we're safe, we're going to have a long talk about trust and transparency between our species. Zorn nodded, a gesture they had adopted from Aria. Agreed, and Aria Novak, we are truly sorry. As they began to search for another exit, Aria's mind whirled with the implications of what she'd learned. The future of human-Tsilith relations now balanced on a nice edge. Could trust be rebuilt? And even if it could, would humanity be willing, or able, to help a species that had deceived them? The Venta's roar echoed through the cave once more, a reminder that before these larger questions could be addressed, they first had to survive. Aria steeled herself for the challenges ahead, knowing that her actions in the coming hours could shape the destiny of two civilizations. The cave trembled again, dust and small rocks raining down from the ceiling. Aria and the Tsiliths pressed deeper into the twisting cavern system, the roars of the Venta growing more distant but no less menacing. There should be another exit on the far side of this cave network, Zorn said, their bioluminescent scales providing a soft glow in the darkness. If we can reach it, we might be able to circle back to our vessel. Aria nodded, her anger at that Silas' deception temporarily overshadowed by their shared peril. Lead the way, but this doesn't mean I've forgotten about your lies. As they navigated the treacherous terrain, Vex moved closer to Aria. While we're trapped here, perhaps we could explain our situation more fully, they suggested, that a voice low and tinged with what Aria interpreted as shame. I'm listening, Aria replied, her tone guarded but not entirely hostile. Vex's scales rippled in the dim light as they began to speak. Our species has always reproduced through spore recombination, as you've seen. For millennia, this process ensured genetic diversity and the health of our collective. But in recent centuries, we've noticed a decline. A decline, Aria prompted, curiosity getting the better of her. Zorn joined the conversation, their usually confident voice subdued. Fewer viable offspring, increased susceptibility to diseases. Some of our greatest minds believe we're approaching a genetic bottleneck that could lead to our extinction within a few generations. The gravity of their situation wasn't lost on Aria. Despite her lingering anger, she felt a pang of sympathy for that Silas. And you thought human DNA might hold the key to your survival. We hoped, Vex admitted. Your species' remarkable adaptability, your diverse genetic makeup. We believed studying these traits might lead us to a solution. Their conversation was cut short by a distant rumble. The Venta, it seemed, hadn't given up its hunt. The group quickened their pace, the uneven cave floor making their progress treacherous. As they rounded a corner, Aria's foot slipped on a loose stone. She stumbled, crying out as she felt her ankle twist beneath her. In an instant, Zorn was at her side, their multiple arms supporting her. Are you injured? That Silith asked, genuine concern evident in their voice. Aria tested her weight on the foot, wincing. I think it's just a sprain, but it's going to slow us down. Vex's compound eyes darted between Aria and the path ahead. We cannot leave you behind. The Venta. A thunderous roar cut off Vex's words. The cave shook violently, and a section of the wall ahead crumbled, revealing one of the Venta's serpentine heads. Its eyes, glowing with bioluminescence similar to that Silas, fixed on the group with predatory intent. In that moment of terror, something unexpected happened. Zorn and Vex moved as one, placing themselves between Aria and the Venta. Their scales began to pulse with an intense, almost blinding light. "What are you doing?" Arya gasped, shielding her eyes. "A defense mechanism," Zorn explained quickly. "The light disorients the Venta, but we can't maintain it for long. We need to move." Supporting Arya between them, the Tyrlis began to retreat down a side passage. The Venta, momentarily stunned by the light display, shook its massive head and began to give chase, its multiple heads snapping at the air. As they ran, or in Arya's case limped as quickly as possible, the human explorer felt a shift in her perception of the Tyrlis. Despite their earlier deception, they were now risking their lives to protect her. It was a sobering reminder that beings from different worlds could still share fundamental values like self-sacrifice and cooperation. "There," Vex called out, pointing ahead with one of their 4 arms. A faint glimmer of the planet's purple skyline was visible through a narrow fissure in the cave wall. They reached the opening, but Arya's heart sank as she realized it was too small for them to pass through. The Venta's roars grew closer, the cave trembling with its approach. Zorn turned to Arya, their compound eyes reflecting the determination in their voice. "Arya Novak, we may have a solution, but it will require your trust. Can you grant us that, despite our past to deceit?" Arya hesitated for a split second, weighing years of human caution against the immediate threat and that Sylith's recent actions. Finally, she nodded. "What's the plan?" Vex stepped forward, retrieving a small, pulsating orb from a pouch at their side. "This is a biotechnology we've been developing. It allows for temporary molecular restructuring. With it, we might be able to alter our forms enough to pass through the fissure." "Might?" Arya asked, eyeing the orb skeptically. "It's largely untested," Zorn admitted, "but it's our only chance." The Venta's roar, now alarmingly close, made the decision for them. "Do it," Arya said. Vex activated the orb, and a wave of tingling energy washed over them. Arya watched in amazement as her own body and those of the Tyrlis began to shimmer and shift, becoming more fluid and malleable. Quickly, Zorn urged, already beginning to flow through the narrow opening. Arya followed, the sensation of her body adapting to the tight space unlike anything she'd ever experienced. It was disorienting, exhilarating, and terrifying all at once. As the last of them squeezed through the fissure, they heard the Venta crash into the cave behind them, its frustrated roars echoing through the rock. They had escaped, but only just. Collapsing on the ground outside, their bodies slowly returning to normal, Arya looked at her Sylith companions with new eyes. "Thank you," she said simply. Zorn's scales rippled with what Arya now recognized as relief. "No, Arya Novak. Thank you for trusting us. We have much to atone for, but perhaps this is a new beginning." As they caught their breath, the twin suns setting on the horizon, Arya realized that this harrowing experience had forged an unexpected alliance. Despite their differences and the challenges ahead, humans and Tyrlis had found common ground in the face of adversity. The journey back to the Tyrlis settlement would be long, and there were still many questions to be answered. But as Arya looked at Zorn and Vex, she felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps this incident, terrifying as it was, could be the catalyst for a deeper, more honest relationship between their species. Little did they know, their ordeal was far from over. As night fell on the alien world, new challenges and revelations awaited, ones that would test the limits of their newfound trust and cooperation. As Arya and her Sylith companions made their way back towards the settlement, the twin moons of Proxima cast an eerie glow over the alien landscape. The group moved cautiously, still on high alert after their encounter with the Venta. "We should reach the outpost by dawn," Zorn said, their voice low. "From there we can contact the main settlement for extraction." Arya nodded, her mind racing with everything that had transpired. The revelation of that Tyrlis genetic crisis, their near-death experience in the caves, and the remarkable display of alien biotechnology had left her reeling. But there was no time to process it all fully. Survival was still their primary concern. As they crested a hill, Vex suddenly froze, their scales shifting to a dark, alarming hue. "Something's wrong," they hissed. Arya followed their gaze and felt her heart sink. In the valley below, where the outpost should have been, there was only a smoking crater. The destruction was total, with no signs of life visible. By the first spore, Zorn whispered, their usual composure shattered. What could have done this? Before anyone could speculate, a high-pitched whine filled the air. Arya's eyes widened as she recognized the sound, energy weapons charging. "Get down," she yelled, tackling Vex to the ground as bolts of searing energy scorched the air where they had been standing. From the shadows of the ruined outpost, figures emerged. They were neither human nor Ahlith, but something altogether alien, sleek, biomechanical beings with glowing red sensory arrays where eyes should be. "Harvesters," Zorn gasped, their voice filled with a terror Arya had never heard before. "We thought they were just a legend." The alien attackers advanced, their movements fluid and predatory. Arya's mind raced, trying to formulate a plan. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and in unfamiliar territory. "What do they want?" Arya asked, her voice barely above a whisper as they retreated behind a rocky outcropping. Vex's scales pulsed with patterns of fear and despair. According to ancient stories, the harvesters seek out worlds of diverse genetic material. They consume entire species, incorporating useful traits into their own evolution. The gravity of the situation hit Arya like a physical blow. This wasn't just about her survival anymore, or even that of the Tsilus. If these harvesters learned of Earth, all of humanity could be at risk. "We need to warn both our peoples," Arya said, determination stealing her voice. "But first, we have to survive this encounter." Zorn nodded, reaching into a pouch at their side. "We have limited defensive capabilities. Some stun grenades, a few short-range energy disruptors. Nothing that can match their firepower." Arya's eyes narrowed as she assessed their options. "Then we don't match it. We outsmart them." "Zorn, you said your buildings are grown, not built. Is there any way we could use the local flora to our advantage?" Vex's scales rippled with sudden understanding. "The chromavines. They're a local species that responds to bioelectric stimuli. If we could activate enough of them, we could create a distraction," Arya finished, a plan forming in her mind. Working quickly, they jury-rigged a device using components from their communicators and the Tsilus biotechnology. As the harvesters closed in on their position, Arya activated the makeshift stimulator. The effect was immediate and stunning. The dormant chromavines that covered the valley floor sprang to life, erupting in a dazzling display of color and movement. The sudden burst of bioelectric activity seemed to disorient the harvesters, their sensory arrays overloaded by the spectacle. "Now!" Arya shouted. They sprinted from their hiding place, Zorn launching stun grenades to further confuse their attackers. As they ran, Arya noticed something strange. The chromavines seemed to be reacting to the harvesters in an unexpected way, their tendrils reaching out and entangling the alien beings. It was as if the planet itself was joining the fight against the invaders. They didn't have time to marvel at the phenomenon. Taking advantage of the chaos, the group made it to the ruins of the outpost. Vex quickly located a still-functional communication array. "We need to send a warning to both Earth and the Tsilith homeworld," Arya said, her fingers flying over the alien controls as Vex translated her intentions. Behind them, the sounds of battle continued. The harvesters were regrouping, fighting against the unexpectedly hostile plant life. It was clear their advantage wouldn't last long. As Arya finished composing the warning message, a chilling realization struck her. "If we send this, we'll give away our position. We'll be trapped here." Zorn placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, the gesture surprisingly human. "Sometimes, Arya Novak, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Our peoples must be warned, whatever the cost to us." Arya nodded, her throat tight with emotion. With a final look at her unlikely alien friends, she hit the transmit button. The The message beamed out into space, carrying with it the hopes for both their species' survival. Almost immediately, they heard the harvesters advancing on their position. The three unlikely allies stood together, facing the entrance to their makeshift fortress. "Whatever happens," Arya said, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her, "it's been an honor to work with you both." Vex's scales shimmered with a pattern Arya now recognized as affection. "The honor has been ours, Arya of Earth. Together, we have already accomplished the impossible, true cooperation between our species." As the first of the harvesters breached their defenses, Arya, Zorn, and Vex stood ready. Human and Stylith, once separated by light years and mistrust, now united in a desperate battle for survival. The fate of two worlds rested on their shoulders, and they were determined not to go down without a fight. The final battle was about to begin, and its outcome would determine the future of not just their small group, but of entire civilizations across the stars. The air crackled with energy as Arya, Zorn, and Vex faced the advancing harvesters. Their makeshift defenses wouldn't hold for long, but they were determined to buy as much time as possible for their warning message to reach Earth and the Xylith homeworld. Arya's mind raced, drawing on every bit of training and experience she had. "Zorn, Vex, can we use the outpost systems to create some kind of electromagnetic pulse? Anything to disrupt their tech?" Vex's scales pulsed with sudden inspiration. "The geothermal taps. If we can overload them, it might create a localized EMP effect." They worked feverishly, rerouting power systems and pushing the ancient outpost tech to its limits. The first of the harvesters breached their perimeter just as Zorn shouted, "Now." Arya slammed her hand down on the improvised activation switch. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a wave of invisible energy pulsed outward. The effect on the harvesters was immediate. Their glowing sensory arrays flickered and dimmed, their movements becoming erratic. "It worked," Arya exclaimed, allowing herself a moment of hope. But that hope was short-lived as she saw the harvesters beginning to adapt, their biomechanical bodies already compensating for the disruption. Just as it seemed all was lost, the sky lit up with a brilliant flash. Arya's heart soared as she recognized the energy signatures of human ships entering the atmosphere, accompanied by sleek, organic-looking Xylith vessels. "They got our message," Zorn said, their voice filled with awe and relief. The battle that ensued was like nothing Arya had ever witnessed. Human ingenuity and firepower combined with Xylith biotechnology in a dazzling display of interspecies cooperation. The harvesters, formidable as they were, found themselves outmatched by the united front. As the dust settled and the last of the harvesters were neutralized, Arya, Zorn, and Vex emerged from their shelter. They were quickly surrounded by a mix of human and Xylith rescue teams, all marveling at the unlikely trio. Admiral Chen, Arya's superior officer, approached, his face a mix of concern and pride. "Explorer Novak, you've certainly gone above and beyond the call of duty. Are you all right?" Arya nodded, suddenly feeling the weight of everything she'd been through. "I'm fine, sir, but there's so much we need to discuss. The Xyliths, the harvesters, the potential threat to Earth." Chen held up a hand, a small smile on his face. "All in good time, Novak. For now, let's get you and your friends here to safety." As they boarded the rescue vessel, Arya found herself seated between Zorn and Vex. The Xyliths seemed just as overwhelmed as she was by the rapid turn of events. "What happens now?" Vex asked, their scales shifting in patterns of uncertainty. Arya took a deep breath, considering the question. "Now, we build on what we started here. Our peoples came together in the face of a common threat. That's a foundation we can work with." Zorn's compound eyes seemed to sparkle with renewed hope. "Perhaps our deception, regrettable as it was, has led to something greater than we could have imagined. A true alliance between humans and Xyliths." As the ship broke atmosphere, Arya gazed out at the stars, her mind already racing with the possibilities. The threat of the harvesters was still out there, but they were no longer facing it alone. and that Syleth's genetic crisis, with human and Syleth scientists working together, a solution seemed more possible than ever. "We have a lot of work ahead of us," Arya said, a determined smile on her face. "Diplomatic negotiations, scientific exchanges, joint defense strategies. But I think we've proven that anything is possible when we work together." Vex's scales rippled with what Arya now recognized as excitement. Indeed, Area of Earth. Today marks the beginning of a new era for both our species. As they journeyed back to Earth, plans already forming for a permanent joint human-Syleth outpost, Arya reflected on the incredible journey that had led to this moment. What had begun as a simple first contact mission had evolved into something far greater, the birth of an interstellar alliance that would shape the future of two civilizations. The challenges ahead were many, but as Arya looked at her Syleth companions, she felt a surge of optimism. Together, they had faced death, overcome mistrust, and united against a common enemy. Whatever the universe might throw at them next, she knew that humans and Syleths would face it side by side. As the blue marble of Earth came into view, Arya smiled. This wasn't an ending, but a beginning. A new chapter in the story of both their species, filled with endless possibilities and horizons yet to be explored.